Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 when I post videos on this channel. And if it is your birthday, I want to wish you a very special happy birthday. Yes, I am still doing that. Coming to you today from the tailgate of my truck. It's still wintertime, I'm not driving it, a little sad about that, but I can sit here on the tailgate and make videos for you. Today's video topic sort of had a genesis back when I was walking around the auction, Barrett-Jackson auction in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah, I got a lot of thinking material from that trip, even though it was kind of a short trip. But anyway, one of the things that got me thinking and looking over some of these vehicles, because the auction has quite a mix of vehicles. It has, well, a majority of older vehicles, but there are some newer vehicles, and there's, like I say, a mix of vehicles. I mean, there's domestics, there's also some European stuff that's there, there's, you know, all kinds of different vehicles that you'd find in a place like that. And a lot of the most significant vehicles that are around there. So things that are highly desirable, things that people want to sell and make some money on. So like rare things like, you know, GT500s and old Lamborghinis, old Ferraris. There was a Bugatti Veyron that was there. There was, you know, custom cars like a Hennessy Venom. Lots of different types of vehicles. But what strikes me when I'm walking around here is I'm looking at, like, in particular, some cars from the 50s and 60s, the American cars in particular, some old Buicks and Oldsmobiles and some of those cars from that era. And I'm just thinking, they just don't design cars like that now. And a lot of those cars were designed with the space age in mind, so they had these lines and sometimes taillights and things that were shaped like rocket ships. So that was the whole thing, to invoke the feeling of just being in a spaceship and not necessarily a car. And granted, I mean, these designs were purely aesthetic. They had no practical purpose, in essence. They just were there just to look cool. I love that, especially like the dashboards, the way they were laid out. I mean, there was one that didn't have buttons or anything. It had like levers next to the steering wheel. And you just don't, at least I don't see that kind of thing being made today. So it left me scratching my head. And I'm not saying, you know, that old cars are the best and they were the best things made. You know, to be perfectly honest, take my Fairmont, for example, made in 1979. It is nostalgic at this point, but I got to tell you, American manufacturing, particularly in the late 70s, it was crap. And the vehicles of today are way better built than they were back then. Because back then they were made by people. And people have bad days, or people get hung over, or so the one car that goes down the line isn't necessarily as good as the next one, you know, and maybe they're having a good day, so you get a car that's, you know, they used to joke about, you know, getting a Wednesday car or getting a Monday car or a Friday car. We've talked about this in another video that I did. That's because there was the human element that was involved in the manufacturing process. Now it's all made by machines and the tolerances are a lot better, and let's face it, vehicles made today are way better than vehicles that were made back then, with the exception of style. Vehicles made today seem like they were all made in a wind tunnel, and I get it, because fuel economy is a big thing, and the faster you go, the more you have to push against the wind, so the slicker your car moves through the wind, the more efficient it can be, especially when it comes to your highway mileage numbers. I get it. But the question that I want to pose to you now is, okay, so say in another 30, maybe 40 years, what's Barrett-Jackson going to look like then? I mean, are these same cars going to get sold and resold over and over again on into eternity? And that's what we're going to be with? Or will there eventually be something like, you know, I don't know, maybe a 2001 Acura Integra GSR, which I've got sitting over there. Maybe that's what's, you know, going to be the next thing. In fact, I'd often said that the late 90s Acura Integras, in particular, were the 57 Chevys of the future, especially like the Integra Type R. That was a significant model and would sell. In fact, a viewer sent me a link to an auction to one that was up in Canada that ended up selling for $20,000, which is pretty stinking close to what it sold for new. And this thing was also a 2001, so it's got some age to it. So I'm left scratching my head to say, okay, well, what vehicles, when we get to that place that's 20 or 30 years down the road, will be featured at these auctions? What are the vehicles that are going to be sought after? Because I look at, like, say, a modern day Impala, and I'm not impressed. I mean, sure, it's a good car, but I mean, it looks like a car. It looks more like an appliance than it does like something that was inspired by the space age, as it's counterparts were 50 years ago. So you look at an Impala of the 60s, you look at an Impala of now, they talked about this on Grand Tour recently, I just realized. But the same type of thing, you know, like where are we going? I mean, what is going to be the future? They don't make them like they used to. Well, there's good reason for that. I mean, cars today are more efficient and, you know, in a lot of ways more reliable. But they don't have that style. I mean, they claim to have style, but that's my point. I mean, what vehicles are we going to be drooling over at Barrett-Jackson in 40 years? That's the real question I'm trying to pose here. I'm not trying to say that old cars are better, blah, blah. No, I'm not doing that, because I realize, you know, there are a lot of people out there with a lot of different taste. I'm trying to understand it myself. So those of you, particularly in the younger generation, throw it back to me. What are you going to see at car shows, at things like Barrett-Jackson being sold, that you're going to be like, oh, I've got to have me one of those? Because at that time, you'll be in the place, hopefully in the position to make those purchases. What are you going to want to buy? What are you going to seek out? And that's out there today. And the only thing I can think of is like your higher end vehicles, like your Ferraris and other stuff like that, things that have a significant, you know, stamp on the automotive world right now, because the rest of it all seems really pedestrian. Whereas a Buick of 1955 had style, it had pizzazz, it had personality, or at least it seemed to. It stood out against other vehicles. My dad, when he was a kid, used to sit on the porch and play a game with his dad as far as, you know, what car was coming down the road, and they could tell just by the silhouette of the car. Now you have to be about this far away from the badge of the car just to know what it is. At least it is for me. So yeah, I'm going to pose a question to you. What are you going to see at Barrett-Jackson many, many years from now? What is today? Will that be significant going forward? Will the internal combustion engine be something of an anomaly? And we'll be, you know, floating around in our George Jetson flying saucers? I don't know. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. Hey, if you have automotive questions, I'm going to ask you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. I'll put a link in the description to make that easy. I'll also put links in the description to other parts of this discussion for you to check out, should you so desire. If you wish to connect with me socially, there's Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I want to thank you for watching and also leave you with, be safe, have fun, stay dirty. See you next time.